How's it going, guys? And welcome back to BL3's Forgotten, the series where I take a look at underused and not often talked about pieces of gear to determine whether or not they deserve to be remembered within the modern meta of the game or should be left behind and forgotten. And today we are taking a look at the Blanc. If you like to farm the Blanc for yourself, you're going to want to fast travel over to the Blast Plains on Gehenna, specifically taking the Fort Kickwater fast travel station, as this is the fast travel station that we are going to be resetting from. From there, you just run over through the gate and towards the bounty target, Ipswich Dunn, who can drop you the Blanc. The Blanc is a legendary Dahl pistol able to roll in any of the elements, including non-elemental. The Blanc also has one of the most confusing special effects, so let's try to explain this the best I can. When you fire this gun in a single firing mode, each time that you hit an enemy, you will stack an inactive buff up to 10 times. Each stack is 35% weapon damage, stacking to a total of 350% at max. When you swap to your other firing mode, the buff is activated, giving you that weapon damage for 11 seconds, which in that time you can then stack the buff again before swapping back to your original firing mode and regaining that buff. This buff is not lost when going into fight for your life or when reloading, however it is lost when you swap weapons. Shots from the Blanc will also ricochet off surfaces once. Now hopefully I explained that well enough because it's important to know how this gun works before I get into why I showed two potential god rolls. I'm going to pull those back up now, as one of these is the max damage roll that you can get and the other one is the max magazine size and fire rate. Shout out to this fine fellow from my Discord server, as he is the person who actually suggested to me that the god roll of the Blanc might actually be one with a higher fire rate and a higher mag size. This is simply due to the fact that this lets you actually get more damage out of that buff as you would if you're reloading constantly. The less you have to reload while that buff is active for those 11 seconds and the more bullets that you can fire, the more you are getting out of that buff. While the max damage roll is giving you more damage per shot to actually be buffed up, you're going to be spending a hell of a lot of time reloading with less time actually firing the gun. And with a reload time averaging around 2 seconds, and with my higher damage roll having a mag size of 12, a fire rate of 9.01, and a reload time of 2.1 seconds, that means that you will be reloading within those 11 seconds about 3 times, which amounts to around 6.3 seconds of reloading, which would leave just 4.7 seconds of actually firing during that buff. And yeah, I mean, this just checked out while playing. I really did not enjoy the higher damage roll nearly as much, but the second I swapped to that lower damage and higher mag size roll, oh my god, this gun felt really fucking good and really fun, and honestly probably one of my favorite Dahl pistols now. The Blanc does have quite the hefty learning curve to it, and the first times you use it, it will feel very awkward, and I think this definitely contributes to why it's unpopular, is that while this is definitely a gun that you can just kind of plug and play on any build, it's a gun that you yourself have to learn how to use and get used to the actual rhythm of playing with it. This is part of why I love it though. While it was a little frustrating and awkward at first, I love guns like this that have some sort of learning curve and skill to using them, because it makes them feel even more rewarding when you start to get the hang of it. And the Blanc especially, I fucking love rhythm games. I grew up playing Rock Band, I had an Osu phase, all this shit, and eventually I started falling into a rhythm with the Blanc, and it was very easy and very fluid to actually start getting the hang of using it. I'm still not as proficient as I want to be with it, but I had a hell of a lot of fun with this gun and it is definitely something that I'm going to be playing more with. Now before we move on from talking about specific rolls, let's talk about the firing modes. Of course the Blanc rolls with 2 of them, and it can roll with either burst fire, semi-auto, and full auto. By far the best option is full auto and burst fire, as the semi-auto kinda wasn't fantastic. It's not terrible and it is definitely still usable, but you do have to do a hell of a lot of clicking and you aren't going to get as much DPS as you can get out of a full auto and burst fire. If you do find yourself just accepting a semi-auto, however, make sure that you do get the burst fire, as the burst fire mode is so fucking broken on this thing. It just fucking dumps out bullets faster than any of the other modes are able to, because it just has no burst delay on it. And while the full auto is definitely better, at least the semi-auto is still pretty decent for stacking, as you can be a little bit more accurate with your shots. Now with this stacking buff being weapon damage, it is definitely less effective on Zane than it is with other characters, just because he already has hundreds of weapon damage just from violent momentum. So while 350% is still a lot, it definitely isn't as impactful as it is with other characters. However, that being said, it is still very good on Zane, especially due to Eraser being able to make actually good use out of those ricocheting projectiles, which kind of just felt like a random slapped on effect that it has, but it ended up actually being pretty useful specifically for Eraser for redirecting those shots shots back into enemies. That 350% weapon damage though definitely felt incredibly nice on all of the other characters. Now, although I did sing this thing's praises for the last couple minutes, there is actually one downside to it, and that's that the projectiles are kind of a little bit slower moving than most other guns. And while it's not a huge deal because of everything else that this weapon does, I'm not a huge fan of it, and it did make it feel a little bit awkward and like I whiffed shots that I otherwise would have hit, which isn't a great feeling for a gun that's about hitting those shots to stack up that buff. But this is definitely more of a nitpicky issue, and it is just something I noticed while playing with it for a decent amount of time. Overall, I fucking loved this thing, even though that slower projectile was a little bit annoying. Everything about this gun was very fun, and learning how to properly use it was really good and felt really rewarding when I started to actually get into that rhythm. Along with that, I love guns that have god rolls that aren't just raw damage. That's definitely just a personal thing and a weird personal thing, but I love when a gun is a little bit more unique than just wanting the highest damage number on the card. The Blanc is simply a Dahl pistol that was very overlooked because it's a little bit goofy and a little bit awkward, but if you put the time in, it can be a very fun gun and a very good gun. Perfectly capable of being used across all the content in the game, especially because of how versatile it is, since as I mentioned earlier, it is able to come in any of the elements for whatever situation you may need it for. But that's gonna do it for this one. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, definitely consider leaving a like, comment, subscribe, all of that. Down in the description will be a link to my Twitch channel where I'll be live right after this video goes up, and below that is a link to my Discord server where you can come and join and hang out. But with that all being said, I hope to see you guys in the next one.